You didn't earn this, you little cheat. The words cut through the applause. Marcus stood frozen on stage, trophy in his hands, as the blonde woman pushed past security. I saw you looking at your phone, Jennifer Hartwick spat. My son studied for months, and you just show up and get every question right? I don't think so. Marcus's grip tightened. 12 years old, and this stranger was calling him a cheater in front of 300 people. Ma'am, I didn't. Don't you, ma'am, me. Make him retake the test right now. Phones were out. Cameras recording. They let anyone in now, and suddenly the standards disappear. Convenient, isn't it? The crowd went silent. A judge stood up, tablet in hand, face pale. She'd just seen something on the screen. Something that changed everything. Have you ever watched someone destroy their entire life because of one racist assumption made in front of hundreds of witnesses with cameras? 3 months earlier. Marcus Washington sat in the back corner of Jefferson Middle School's library, a stack of advanced calculus books surrounding him like a fortress. While other 7th graders were at lunch, talking about video games and sports, he was here. Always here. You're gonna burn out, little man, the librarian, Mrs. Chen, said gently as she passed by with her cart. It's okay to take breaks. Marcus looked up, adjusting his glasses. I'm fine, Mrs. Chen. Really? But he wasn't fine. He was tired. Tired in a way that had nothing to do with the math problems he solved effortlessly, and everything to do with constantly having to prove he belonged in the advanced program. His teacher, Mr. Peterson, had pulled him aside last week. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest. Are you getting help at home with these assignments? The question had felt like a punch. Marcus's mother worked 2 jobs, one as a nurse's aide during the day, another cleaning offices at night. His father had left when he was 3. Help at home? His mom barely had time to ask about his day. No, sir, Marcus had answered, his voice small. I do them myself. Mr. Peterson had studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly, clearly unconvinced. Well, keep up the good work. That night, Marcus had cried in his room. Not because the math was hard, math had never been hard. Numbers made sense in a way people didn't. Equations didn't care about the color of his skin or the worn-out sneakers he wore or the fact that his lunch came from the free meal program. But people cared. People always cared. He remembered being 6 years old, in 1st grade, when he'd corrected his teacher's addition mistake on the board. She'd smiled tightly and said, "That's very nice, Marcus, but let's let the teacher do the teaching." 3 weeks later, when a white student, Connor Hayes, had done the same thing, she'd called him brilliant and sent a note home praising his natural gift for mathematics. Natural gift. Those words had echoed in Marcus's head for years. When would his gift be considered natural? When would he be allowed to just be smart without it being suspicious? The National Mathematics Olympiad invitation had arrived 2 months ago. Marcus had stared at the letter for 10 minutes straight, reading and rereading it. Students from all 50 states. The top 100 young mathematicians in the country. A full scholarship to math camp. A trophy. Recognition. His mother had wept when he showed her. Real tears, streaming down her tired face. Baby, I'm so proud of you. Your grandfather would have been so proud. His grandfather. Dr. James Washington. Marcus had never met him, he died a year before Marcus was born. But his presence filled their small apartment. Photographs lined the walls, a young black man in graduation robes from MIT, then in professor's robes, then standing in front of a chalkboard covered in complex equations. Dr. James Washington had been one of the first black professors of mathematics at Princeton University. He'd published groundbreaking work in number theory. He'd mentored dozens of students who went on to change the field. And he'd died at 52, a heart attack at his desk, still fighting to prove that excellence had no color. Marcus's mother kept his grandfather's books. Advanced texts on topology, abstract algebra, mathematical analysis. Some nights, when she got home from her second shift, she'd find Marcus asleep with one of those books open on his chest, pencil still in his hand, pages filled with his attempts to understand his grandfather's notes in the margins. "You have his mind," she'd whisper, carefully removing his glasses and pulling the blanket over him. "You have his gift. Don't let anyone take that from you." But they tried. Oh, they tried. When Marcus qualified for the Olympiad, 3 parents had filed complaints with the school. He'd heard about it from the principal's secretary, who'd felt sorry for him. They'd claimed the qualifying test must have been compromised. That there was no way a student from that background could score higher than their children without some kind of assistance. The school had made him retake the test. In a separate room. With 2 proctors watching his every move. No calculator, no notes, just him and the problems. He'd scored even higher the second time. The complaints had stopped, but the whispers hadn't. In the hallways. In the bathroom. Even from some teachers who thought he couldn't hear. Probably has someone doing the work for him. These diversity programs, you know. My son studied with a tutor for 2 years, and this kid just shows up. Marcus had learned to keep his head down. To be quiet about his achievements. To make himself smaller, less threatening, more palatable. He'd learned that being exceptional while black meant walking a tightrope, too successful and you were suspicious, not successful enough and you were confirming their biases. The Olympiad was supposed to be different. National stage. Objective scoring. No room for doubt. He'd practiced for months. Every spare moment. His mother had scrimped and saved to buy him prep materials. Mrs. Chen had let him stay in the library after hours. He'd worked until his eyes burned and his head ached. And he'd walked into that competition knowing he could win. Knowing he would win. The competition itself had been beautiful. Pure. Just Marcus, the problems, and the elegant dance of numbers that had always been his sanctuary. Round 1, Algebra and Geometry. He'd finished in 18 minutes. The proctor had looked at him suspiciously, checked his work twice, then nodded in stunned silence. Perfect score. Round 2, Combinatorics and Number Theory. This was where most competitors fell apart, where the problems required not just knowledge but intuition, the ability to see patterns that weren't obvious. Marcus had smiled as he worked through them. He could almost hear his grandfather's voice in his head, guiding him through the logic. 23 minutes. Perfect score. Round 3, the final challenge. 5 problems that would determine the winner. The room had been silent except for the scratch of pencils and the occasional frustrated sigh. Marcus had closed his eyes for a moment, centering himself, then opened them and began. The first problem was about prime factorization, but hidden beneath layers of complexity. He'd unraveled it like a gift. The second involved geometric sequences that spiraled into infinity. He'd found the pattern in 4 minutes. The third was a trap, designed to lead you down the wrong path with its obvious solution. Marcus had seen through it immediately, his grandfather's training kicking in, always question the obvious. The fourth problem had made him pause. It was about probability, but it required understanding something deeper: game theory, decision trees, the mathematics of choice and consequence. He'd sat there for 6 full minutes, pencil hovering over paper, while doubt crept in. What if he was wrong? What if this was the moment he failed? Then he'd remembered his mother's words: "You have his mind. You have his gift." Marcus had written the solution in a burst of certainty, numbers and symbols flowing onto the page like a language he'd been born knowing. When he'd finished, he'd felt it in his bones: it was right. The fifth problem was the hardest. A complex proof involving multiple branches of mathematics, the kind of problem that separated the very good from the exceptional. Marcus had approached it methodically, building the proof step by step, checking each conclusion before moving forward. 38 minutes on that one problem alone. But when he'd written the final line, he'd known, perfect. He'd been the first to finish. 42 minutes before the time limit. As he'd stood to submit his papers, he'd caught the look on Jennifer Hartwick's son's face, Derek, a tall white boy with expensive prep school polish. Pure shock. And something else. Anger. Jennifer had been in the audience, 3 rows back. Marcus had noticed her earlier, the way she'd stared at him when he'd walked in. That look wasn't new to him, the narrowed eyes, the tight mouth, the assessment that found him wanting before he'd even begun. She'd leaned over to whisper to another parent, their eyes both fixed on him. During the lunch break between rounds, Marcus had overheard her in the hallway. "I'm telling you, something's not right," Jennifer had been saying to a small group of parents. "My Derek has been working with a Princeton tutor for 18 months. There's no way some random kid from an inner-city school just walks in here and dominates like that. Maybe he's just good," another parent had offered weakly. "Good?" Jennifer's laugh had been sharp. "Please. I saw him looking at his lap during round 2. Probably has answers on his phone. These kids today, they have no integrity. And the organizers are so worried about appearances, about diversity, that they don't properly monitor." Marcus had walked away before hearing more, his appetite gone, his hands shaking. Even here. Even at the national level, where everything was recorded and proctored and verified. Even here, his excellence was suspicious. But he hadn't let it break his focus. He'd gone into round 3 with fire in his chest, with his grandfather's legacy pushing him forward, with every doubt and whisper and accusation fueling his determination. He'd solve those problems not just for himself, but for every black kid who'd been told they didn't belong in advanced classes, for every student of color whose achievements were questioned, for his grandfather who'd fought this same battle decades ago. When the judges had announced the results, Marcus Washington, first place, perfect score in all 3 rounds, the applause had been genuine. Most of it. Marcus had walked onto that stage with his head high, accepting the trophy with hands that finally stopped shaking, feeling for one perfect moment like he'd won more than just a competition. Then Jennifer's voice had shattered everything. "You didn't earn this, you little cheat." And suddenly Marcus was back in 1st grade, being told to let the teacher do the teaching. Back in 7th grade, retaking a test in a monitored room because parents didn't believe his scores. Back in every moment where his blackness made his brilliance impossible to accept. The trophy was heavy in his hands as phones came out, as cameras pointed, as Jennifer Hartwick accused him of cheating in front of everyone who just watched him win. And that's when the judge stood up, tablet in hand, face pale. She'd just pulled up something on the screen. Something that was about to change everything. "Mrs. Hartwick," Judge Patricia Monroe's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. She stood behind the judge's table, tablet clutched in both hands, her dark skin flushed with barely contained anger. "I need you to stop talking. Right now." Jennifer whirled toward her, confidence still blazing in her eyes. "Finally. Someone's taking this seriously. I demand." "You demand nothing," Patricia interrupted, her voice cold and precise. "What you've just done is make a public accusation of cheating against a minor, in front of 300 witnesses, with 0 evidence. Do you understand the legal implications of that?" Jennifer's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. But she recovered quickly, her voice rising with indignation. "I saw what I saw." He was looking at his lap during round 2. Obviously checking his phone for answers. He was adjusting his papers, Patricia said flatly. "I was the proctor for round 2. I was standing 6 feet away from Marcus Washington the entire time. He never touched a phone. He never looked at anything except his test paper and the ceiling, which, if you knew anything about how mathematical thinkers work, you'd recognize as normal behavior when someone is processing complex problems mentally. The audience had gone completely silent. Every phone was still recording. Jennifer's face was beginning to turn red. Furthermore, Patricia continued, tapping her tablet, every single desk in that testing room has a camera mounted above it, recording the entire competition from a bird's eye view. Would you like me to play Marcus's footage right now, Mrs. Hartwick? All 2 hours and 47 minutes of it? So everyone here can watch him solve problems that your son, and frankly, most adult mathematicians, couldn't solve without significant time and resources? Jennifer's confidence cracked visibly. That's not. I'm not saying he's not smart, I'm just saying the circumstances are suspicious. The only suspicious circumstance here, another judge interjected, Dr. Robert Chen, a mathematics professor from Stanford, standing now with his arms crossed, is why you feel entitled to question the legitimacy of a perfect score achieved by a black child when you said nothing about the 3 white students who've won this competition in the past 5 years, 2 of whom had perfect scores. This isn't about race. Jennifer's voice cracked with desperation. She looked around at the crowd, seeking allies, but found only phones and horrified stares. This is about integrity. About fair competition. My son worked so hard. Your son placed 7th, Patricia said quietly. Out of 100 competitors. That's exceptional. He should be proud. But 7th place doesn't get the trophy, Mrs. Hartwick. 1st place does. And Marcus Washington earned 1st place with the highest individual round scores we've seen in this competition's 17-year history. Marcus stood frozen during this entire exchange, trophy still clutched to his chest. He wanted to disappear. He wanted to defend himself. He wanted to scream. But his mother's training held firm, stay calm, stay quiet, let the truth speak for itself. Even though his whole body was shaking. Even though tears were burning behind his eyes. Jennifer's purse slipped off her shoulder and hit the stage floor with a loud thud. She didn't pick it up. You're all making this about something it's not. I'm just asking questions. I have a right to ask questions when something seems off. And we have an obligation, Dr. Chen said, his voice hard as steel, to protect our competitors from baseless accusations rooted in racial bias. What you're doing right now, Mrs. Hartwick, is textbook discrimination. You're assuming incompetence based on race, and then demanding that a child prove his innocence when we have documented evidence of his excellence. A woman in the 3rd row stood up. She was black, in her 50s, wearing a business suit. I'm Dr. Angela Freeman, Dean of Mathematics at Howard University. I've been a judge at this competition for 8 years. Her voice carried across the auditorium with quiet authority. I watched Marcus Washington solve the 5th problem in round 3, the proof problem. That problem has a 92% failure rate. It's designed to be nearly impossible under time pressure. This young man approached it with a methodical brilliance that I've rarely seen in students twice his age. He didn't just solve it. He found an elegant solution that took 3 different mathematical concepts and wove them together in a way that showed true understanding, not memorization. Jennifer was backing away now, slowly, her eyes darting between the judges and the cameras. I didn't mean. I wasn't trying to. Yes, you were, Patricia said softly. You absolutely were. And now you need to leave this stage before security removes you. But Jennifer wasn't finished destroying herself. Pride, or perhaps panic, made her double down one last time. Fine. Fine, if he's so brilliant, make him solve another problem right now. No prep time, no study materials. Let's see if he can do it without. Without what? Marcus's voice surprised everyone, including himself. It was quiet, but it carried. He'd been silent for so long that hearing him speak made the entire room lean forward. Without cheating? Is that what you were going to say? Jennifer's mouth snapped shut. Marcus took a step forward, his hands no longer shaking. The fear was still there, but underneath it, something else was rising. Anger. Righteous, burning anger. You want me to prove myself again? That's what you're asking? His voice grew stronger. I took the qualifying test twice because parents like you complained. I scored higher the second time. I just competed in 3 rounds, on camera, with proctors watching my every move. I got a perfect score. Perfect. And it's still not enough for you. Marcus's voice cracked slightly, but he pushed through. You want to know why I looked down during round 2? Because problem 17 made me think of my grandfather. He wrote a paper on sequential probability theory in 1987. I have it at home. I've read it 43 times. And when I saw that problem, I had to take a breath because for a second, I could hear his voice explaining it to me, even though he died before I was born. The silence in the auditorium was absolute. My grandfather was Dr. James Washington, Marcus continued, and he saw several of the judges' faces change, recognition, respect, even awe. He taught at Princeton for 26 years. He published over 60 papers. He mentored hundreds of students. And you know what people said about him? The same thing you're saying about me. That he didn't belong. That he must have cheated. That there was no way someone who looked like him could be that brilliant. Jennifer had gone pale. She was shaking her head slowly, realizing too late where this was going. He kept every letter, Marcus said, his voice strengthening with each word. Every rejection, every accusation, every concerned question about the validity of his work. My mom showed them to me when I was 10. Do you know what he wrote in his journal the year before he died? I've proven myself 1,000 times, and it's still not enough. But I keep proving it anyway, because the children who come after me need to see that it's possible. Tears were streaming down Marcus's face now, but his voice never wavered. So yes, Mrs. Hartwick. I'll solve another problem for you. I'll solve 10 more problems if that's what it takes. Because that's what my grandfather did. That's what my mother does every single day when she works 2 jobs and still finds time to quiz me on theorems. That's what every black kid in every advanced program has to do, be twice as good to be considered half as worthy. Dr. Chen stepped forward, his hand raised. Marcus, you don't have to. No, I want to, Marcus interrupted. I want everyone here to see this. To understand what she's really asking me to do. Patricia Monroe pulled up a problem on the main projection screen. It was a graduate-level question, something from a university qualifying exam. The audience gasped. Several parents immediately pulled out their phones to Google it, realizing within seconds that this was far beyond the competition level. This is inappropriate, Dr. Freeman protested. This is a problem designed for graduate students. It's fine, Marcus said quietly. He walked to the whiteboard at the side of the stage, picked up a marker, and began to write. The auditorium held its breath. Marcus's hand moved steadily across the board. Numbers, symbols, Greek letters flowing in perfect formation. He wasn't just solving the problem, he was explaining it as he went, his voice clear and pedagogical, like a professor teaching a class. The key here is recognizing that this isn't actually about the limit function, he said, circling a section of his work. It's about the behavior of the sequence as it approaches infinity. If we apply the squeeze theorem here, and combine it with L'Hopital's rule modified for discrete sequences. Jennifer had started crying. Not tears of rage anymore, but tears of dawning horror. She'd pulled out her own phone and was frantically typing, probably searching Marcus's grandfather's name, probably seeing the Wikipedia page, the published papers, the legacy. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped her phone. Marcus finished the problem in 7 minutes. The solution covered half the whiteboard, elegant and irrefutable. Dr. Freeman stood up and slowly began to applaud. Then Dr. Chen joined her. Then Patricia. Then the entire panel of judges. Then the audience, first one person, then 10, then everyone except Jennifer and a small cluster of parents around her who looked like they wanted to melt into their seats. Marcus set down the marker and turned to Jennifer. His face was wet with tears, but his expression was calm, almost peaceful. "Is that enough?" he asked quietly. "Or should I solve another one?" Jennifer couldn't speak. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Her face had gone from red to white to a sickly gray color. "Mrs. Hartwick," Patricia said, her voice cutting through the applause, "I'm going to ask you one more time to leave this stage. If you don't, I'm calling actual police, and this situation becomes much worse for you than it already is." But before Jennifer could move, a commotion erupted at the back of the auditorium. The main doors had opened, and a man in a dark suit was striding down the center aisle, his footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. He was tall, distinguished-looking, probably in his 60s, with silver hair and an air of authority that made people instinctively step aside. Behind him, two younger people followed, a woman with a briefcase and a man with a professional camera. Judge Monroe's face went completely white. "Dr. Thornton? What are you?" The man reached the stage and looked directly at Marcus, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades of academic authority. "Is this the young man who just solved a Princeton graduate qualifier in 7 minutes? If you think Jennifer crossed the line and that every child deserves to have their achievement celebrated without racist accusations, comment respect below." Dr. Thornton climbed onto the stage with surprising agility for a man his age. Up close, Marcus could see the Princeton University pin on his lapel, the prestigious mathematics department insignia that his grandfather had worn in every professional photo. "My name is Dr. Richard Thornton," the man said, not to Marcus, but to the entire auditorium, his voice projecting without effort. "I'm the current chair of the mathematics department at Princeton University. I was also a colleague of Dr. James Washington for 15 years before his death." Jennifer made a small, wounded sound. Several parents in the audience had their phones out, clearly searching Dr. Thornton's credentials. Their faces went pale as the results came back. "I'm here," Dr. Thornton continued, "because Dr. Angela Freeman sent me a text message approximately 8 minutes ago informing me that James Washington's grandson was competing in this event, and that something remarkable was happening. So I got in my car, I was only 20 minutes away, and I drove here as fast as legally possible." He turned to Marcus, and his stern expression softened. "Young man, I watched you solve that problem from the back of the auditorium. I want you to know something. Your grandfather was the finest mathematical mind I ever had the privilege of working with. He was brilliant, he was rigorous, and he was kinder than anyone gave him credit for. He spent half his career proving he belonged, and the other half making sure students like you would have an easier path than he did." Marcus couldn't speak. Tears were flowing freely now, but he didn't care. "When James died," Dr. Thornton said, his own voice thickening with emotion, "I lost not just a colleague, but a friend. He used to talk about his family constantly. About his daughter who became a nurse because she wanted to help people. About the grandson he'd never meet, but who he knew was coming. Your mother was pregnant when he died. He used to joke that you'd probably inherit his love of prime numbers and his terrible handwriting." A ripple of gentle laughter went through the audience. Marcus smiled through his tears. "What I saw you do just now," Dr. Thornton gestured to the whiteboard, "that wasn't just solving a problem. That was thinking like a mathematician. That was understanding the underlying principles and applying them with confidence and creativity. Your grandfather would have been so proud. I am proud, and I barely know you." He turned to Jennifer, and the gentleness vanished from his face entirely. "As for you, Mrs. Hartwick." His voice could have frozen nitrogen. "What you've done here today is not just shameful. It's actionable. You made a public accusation of academic fraud against a minor, in front of hundreds of witnesses, with no evidence whatsoever. You did this because, and let's be absolutely clear about this, you could not accept that a young black child outperformed your son. Jennifer was openly sobbing now, mascara running down her face. I didn't know. I just thought. You thought what? That he cheated because he's black? Dr. Thornton's voice was quiet now, which somehow made it more terrifying. That's exactly what you thought. That's exactly what you said, even if you used careful words to say it. He pulled out his phone and held it up. I recorded the last 4 minutes of this confrontation. I have video of you demanding that a child, a competition winner, prove himself again because you couldn't believe he earned his victory honestly. I have audio of you saying, and I quote, "They let anyone in now, and suddenly the standards disappear." Jennifer's knees actually buckled. She grabbed the edge of the judge's table to steady herself. Do you know what I do with evidence like this? Dr. Thornton continued. I share it with my colleagues at every major university in this country. I share it with academic journals. I share it with the organizations that fund scholarships and academic competitions. And I make sure that your name, Jennifer Hartwick, becomes synonymous with the exact kind of racist gatekeeping that we've been fighting to eliminate from academia for decades. Please, Jennifer whispered. Please, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll apologize. Oh, you'll apologize, Patricia Monroe interjected. Right now. To Marcus. In front of everyone. And it better be genuine, because if it's not, I'm submitting a formal complaint to the competition board, which will trigger an investigation, which will involve lawyers, which will cost you more money than your son's prep school tuition. Jennifer turned to Marcus, her face destroyed, tears and makeup mixing into tragic streaks. She tried to speak, but only a sob came out. I'm so sorry, she finally managed, her voice breaking on every word. I was wrong. Completely wrong. You earned this. You earned every bit of this. I was scared and angry and I took it out on you and that was horrible and I'm so sorry. Marcus stood very still. Every eye in the auditorium was on him. This was his moment, the moment where he could be gracious or vengeful, forgiving or righteous. He could feel the weight of his grandfather's legacy, his mother's sacrifices, every black student who'd ever been doubted. I accept your apology, he said quietly. But you need to understand something. This isn't about me accepting it. This is about you learning why what you did was wrong. Really learning it, not just saying sorry because you got caught. Jennifer nodded frantically, unable to form words. Dr. Thornton placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Marcus Washington, on behalf of Princeton University, I'd like to formally invite you to attend our summer mathematics program for exceptional youth. Full scholarship, housing included, with a stipend for expenses. It's a program your grandfather helped create in 1983. I think he'd want you there. The auditorium erupted in applause. Real, genuine, thunderous applause. Marcus stood on that stage, trophy in one hand, Dr. Thornton's hand on his shoulder, and felt something he'd never felt before, complete vindication. The applause washed over him like a warm wave, and for the first time in his 12 years, being brilliant and black didn't feel like a contradiction. But vindication, he was about to learn, always comes with a price. Dr. Thornton leaned down, his voice low enough that only Marcus could hear over the applause. There's someone here who needs to meet you. Someone who's been waiting a very long time. Marcus looked up, confused, and followed Dr. Thornton's gaze to the side entrance of the auditorium. A woman stood there, elderly, perhaps in her 70s, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun. She wore a purple dress and held a cane, but she wasn't leaning on it, she gripped it like she was holding herself back from running forward. When their eyes met, the woman's face crumpled with emotion. Dr. Thornton guided Marcus off the stage, past Jennifer who stood frozen in her shame, past the judges who nodded with respect, past the cameras that were still recording everything. The audience's applause followed them like a benediction. As they approached the woman, she began to shake. Her free hand came up to her mouth, and tears spilled down her weathered cheeks. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You look just like him. Just like James." Dr. Thornton made the introduction with gentle reverence. "Marcus, this is Dr. Eleanor Washington Chen. Your grandfather's sister. Your great-aunt." Marcus felt the floor tilt beneath him. I didn't know I had a great-aunt." Eleanor let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. "Your mother and we had a falling out after James died. A stupid, stubborn falling out about his estate, about his papers, about grief that made us both cruel. I've been trying to reach her for 5 years. She won't return my calls." Her voice broke. "I didn't even know you existed until 3 months ago when a colleague mentioned James's grandson was competing today." She reached out with a trembling hand and touched Marcus's face, her fingers soft and warm. "You have his eyes. And his mind, my God, I watched you solve that problem. James used to do exactly that, work through complex proofs while explaining them out loud. He said it helped him think." Marcus didn't know what to do with this information. A great-aunt. His grandfather's sister. Family he'd never known existed, all because of some argument that happened before he was born. "I wanted to come earlier," Eleanor continued, her words tumbling out in a rush, "but I was afraid. Afraid your mother would have me removed. Afraid you wouldn't want to know me. But when I saw what that horrible woman was doing to you, when I heard her accuse you of cheating, I couldn't stay hidden anymore. I had to be here. James would have wanted." Her voice broke completely. She pulled Marcus into a hug, and he let her, this stranger who smelled like lavender and old books and something indefinably familiar. Over Eleanor's shoulder, Marcus saw his mother. She was standing at the back of the auditorium, having just arrived from her day's shift at the hospital. Still in her nurse's aide scrubs, her hair pulled back in a practical bun, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. She'd promised to come, had sworn she'd make it, but Marcus had seen her schedule. He'd known it would be nearly impossible. Yet here she was. And she was staring at Eleanor with an expression Marcus had never seen on her face before, a mixture of pain, anger, love, and something that might have been longing. Eleanor released Marcus and turned, following his gaze. When she saw her niece, she went completely still. "Diane," Eleanor whispered. Marcus's mother, Diane Washington, stood frozen for a long moment. Other audience members were starting to notice, to whisper, sensing another drama unfolding. Phones were rising again, though several people were shushing others, aware they were witnessing something deeply private. Diane walked forward slowly, her practical work shoes squeaking slightly on the auditorium floor. When she reached them, she looked first at Marcus, checking him over with that maternal X-ray vision that could spot a fever or a lie from across a room. "Baby, are you okay?" she asked, ignoring Eleanor entirely. "I got here as fast as I could. Mrs. Chen from the library called me at work, said something was happening. Said you needed me. Mom, I'm okay. I won. I got first place." Marcus held up the trophy, but his voice was tentative, aware of the tension crackling between the two women. Diane's face lit up with fierce pride, and she pulled him into a hug that smelled like antiseptic and the vanilla lotion she always used. "Of course you did. Of course you won, baby. I never doubted it for a second." "Diane," Eleanor said again, her voice stronger now. "Please. It's been 12 years. Can we please just—" "Not here," Diane cut her off, her voice tight. "Not now. This is Marcus's moment. We're not doing this here." But Dr. Thornton, who'd been standing back diplomatically, stepped forward. "Actually, if I may, there's something both of you need to know. Something about Marcus's grandfather's estate that was never properly settled." Both women turned to look at him sharply. James left something, Dr. Thornton continued. Something specifically for his grandchildren, should he have any. It was part of his will, held in trust by the university. But because of the complications between the two of you, it was never properly transferred. The university has been holding it, waiting for resolution. Diane's face went pale. What are you talking about? James's estate was settled. Everything went to Eleanor as next of kin. I didn't fight it. I didn't want. Not everything, Dr. Thornton interrupted gently. James established an educational trust separate from his estate. $350,000, invested over the past 12 years, now worth approximately $600,000. It's designated specifically for any grandchildren's education, with the stipulation that it can also be used for immediate family hardship if needed. The auditorium had gone silent again. Jennifer Hartwick, still standing near the stage with her face buried in her hands, looked up sharply at the mention of that amount of money. Marcus's mother swayed on her feet. Dr. Thornton reached out to steady her, but she waved him off, her eyes wide with shock. 600. She couldn't even finish the sentence. Eleanor was crying again, but these were different tears. I tried to tell you. I tried to reach you 5 years ago when the trust lawyer finally tracked me down. I wanted to make this right, Diane. I wanted to help, but you wouldn't talk to me. Because you said, Diane's voice rose, years of pain and anger finally breaking through. You said I wasn't good enough for James's son. You said I'd trapped him with a baby. You said I was just. I know what I said. Eleanor's voice cracked. I was grieving and angry and looking for someone to blame for losing my brother, and I said unforgivable things. I've regretted every word for 12 years, Diane. Every single day. Marcus watched his mother's face cycle through emotions too complex to name. The auditorium had become a theater of intimate pain, 300 strangers bearing witness to a family's wounds being reopened under fluorescent lights. You don't get to do this, Diane said, her voice shaking. You don't get to show up at my son's moment of triumph and suddenly want to be family again because there's money involved. That's not, Eleanor started, but Diane wasn't finished. Do you know what the last 12 years have been like? Diane's hands were clenched into fists at her sides. Working 2 jobs? Choosing between groceries and Marcus's math books? Watching him wear shoes 2 sizes too small because we couldn't afford new ones? And all that time, there was money. Money that James set aside for exactly this purpose. Money that could have. She broke off, covering her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Marcus moved to her instinctively, wrapping his arms around her waist like he used to do when he was smaller. Mom, it's okay. We're okay. We made it. But even as he said it, he felt the weight of what had been stolen from them. Not just the money, but the ease it would have brought. His mother sleeping more than 4 hours a night. Him not having to feel guilty every time he asked for a book or a calculator. The constant, grinding anxiety about rent and food and whether they'd make it through another month. Dr. Thornton cleared his throat gently. If I may, there's more you should know. The trust includes a letter from James. It's sealed, addressed, to my grandchildren. The lawyers wouldn't let us open it, they said only the intended recipients could break the seal. Marcus, legally, that letter belongs to you now. He pulled a manila envelope from his jacket's inner pocket. It was yellowed with age, the seal marked with Princeton's official stamp. In faded blue ink, Marcus could read his grandfather's handwriting, to my grandchildren, to be opened when they are old enough to understand. Marcus took the envelope with trembling hands. The paper felt heavy, weighted with more than just ink and time. You don't have to open it now, Eleanor said softly. You can wait, take it home. No. Marcus's voice was firm. I want to open it now. I want to know what he wanted to tell me. He carefully broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in his grandfather's neat handwriting. Marcus began to read aloud, his voice steady despite the tears blurring his vision. To my grandchildren. If you're reading this, it means I didn't get to meet you. That breaks my heart in ways I can't fully express. But it also fills me with hope, because your existence means my legacy continues beyond the papers I've published and the students I've taught. By now, you've probably heard stories about me. Some will be true. Some will be exaggerated by time and love. Here's what I want you to know as truth. I was not a perfect man. I was brilliant at mathematics and terrible at forgiveness. I held grudges. I let pride make me cruel sometimes, especially to the people I loved most. When your grandmother died, I pushed everyone away, including my own sister Eleanor, who was only trying to help me grieve. If Eleanor and your parent are fighting when you read this, know that it's my fault. I put impossible standards on everyone around me, including my daughter. I wanted her to marry up, someone with degrees and status, because I thought that would protect her from the prejudice I faced. When she chose love over status, I said things I can never take back. Things I regretted the moment they left my mouth. I'm leaving you this money not as a gift, but as an apology. An apology for the family discord my pride created. An apology for any hardship my daughter faced because I wasn't there to support her choice. An apology for not being there to meet you, to teach you, to love you. Here's what I hope for you. I hope you're brilliant, but I hope you're kind more than brilliant. I hope you love mathematics, but if you don't, I hope you love something with equal passion. I hope you never have to prove yourself the way I did, but if you do, I hope you remember that your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. Most importantly, I hope Eleanor and your parent have reconciled by the time you read this. If they haven't, I'm asking you to be the bridge I failed to build. Forgive in ways I couldn't. Love in ways I was too proud to love. You carry my name. Carry it better than I did. With all the love I wish I'd expressed more freely. Your grandfather. Dr. James Washington. P.S. If you've inherited my love of prime numbers, there's a box in Eleanor's possession containing all my research notebooks. They're yours if you want them. If you haven't inherited that particular madness, that's perfectly fine too. Be yourself, whoever that is. By the time Marcus finished reading, there wasn't a dry eye in their small circle. Even Dr. Thornton was wiping at his face with a handkerchief. Eleanor and Diane were looking at each other with expressions of raw grief and recognition. 12 years of anger and hurt and stubborn pride suddenly seemed so small in the face of a dead man's wisdom and regret. He was right, Eleanor whispered. About everything. I did exactly what he warned against. I let pride keep me from the people I should have loved. Diane was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. I was so angry at you. But I was really angry at him for dying. For leaving me alone with a baby and no idea how to raise a genius. For not being there to see Marcus grow up to be exactly like him. I'm sorry, both women said simultaneously, then let out sounds between laughs and sobs. Eleanor reached out, and after a moment's hesitation, Diane took her hand. I can't erase 12 years, Eleanor said. But I'd like to try to build something new. If you'll let me. Diane nodded, unable to speak. Dr. Thornton smiled, looking satisfied. James would be pleased. He always said the hardest proofs to solve were the ones involving human hearts. Marcus stood there, holding his trophy in one hand and his grandfather's letter in the other, surrounded by family he'd just met and family he'd known his whole life, and felt something shift in his chest. Relief. Joy. The sense that something broken was finally being repaired. Then his mother's phone rang. She pulled it out of her pocket, glanced at the screen, and her face went from tear-stained joy to sudden, terrible fear in the space of a heartbeat. It's the hospital, she whispered. It's Marcus's school, they have him listed as emergency contact for students. Why would they? She answered. Hello? This is Diane Washington. Marcus watched his mother's face drain of all color. Watched her knees buckle. Watched Eleanor catch her before she fell. What? When? Is he? Diane's voice rose to a panicked pitch. I'm coming right now. Tell him I'm coming. She ended the call, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. Mom? Marcus's voice came out small, terrified. What happened? Diane looked at him, and her face held the kind of devastation that changes everything. It's Jerome. Your friend Jerome. Baby, there was an incident at school. He's alive, but he's in the ICU. They don't know if he's going to make it. The trophy slipped from Marcus's hand and hit the floor with a hollow clang that echoed through the now silent auditorium. Jerome Martinez. His best friend since 3rd grade. The only other kid in advanced classes who understood what it felt like to be different, to be questioned, to have to prove yourself every single day. Jerome, who'd been getting worse lately, quieter, more withdrawn. Jerome, who'd said last week, sometimes I'm just tired of fighting, you know? Marcus had known. God help him, he'd known something was wrong, and he'd been so focused on the competition, so wrapped up in his own struggle, that he hadn't. I have to go, Diane said, already moving toward the exit. I have to get to the hospital. He doesn't have anyone else, his mom's working a double shift, she can't get there for another hour. I'm coming with you, Marcus said immediately. Baby, your competition, the reception. I don't care about the reception. Marcus's voice cracked. Jerome needs us. We have to go now. Dr. Thornton stepped forward immediately, his voice taking on the commanding tone of someone used to making things happen. My car is right outside. I'll drive you, it'll be faster than waiting for a cab, and I can get you through traffic quickly. Eleanor was already gathering her things. I'm coming too. If Jerome's mother can't be there, he shouldn't wake up alone with strangers. They moved as a unit toward the exit, but Patricia Monroe intercepted them, her face stricken with concern. Marcus, wait, we need to handle the awards ceremony, the photos, the scholarship paperwork. Send it to his house, Dr. Thornton said curtly. A child is in the hospital. Nothing else matters right now. Patricia nodded quickly, stepping aside. As they passed, Marcus saw Jennifer Hartwick still standing near the stage, watching them leave. Her face held an expression he couldn't quite read, shame, certainly, but also something else. Recognition, perhaps, of how trivial her concerns had been compared to what really mattered. The drive to County General Hospital took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. Marcus sat in the back seat between his mother and Eleanor, his mind replaying every interaction he'd had with Jerome over the past month. The signs had been there. He'd just been too blind, or too selfish, to see them. Jerome missing 3 days of school 2 weeks ago. Just sick, he'd said, but his eyes had been red, and not from a cold. Jerome giving Marcus his favorite calculator last Friday. You'll need this more than me for the competition, he'd said. At the time, Marcus had thought it was just generosity. Now he recognized it for what it was, someone giving away their possessions. Jerome's text message from this morning, sent at 6:47 a.m., good luck today, Marcus. You're going to do amazing things. Don't forget about us regular people when you're famous, okay? Marcus had responded with a laughing emoji and, you're not regular, you're brilliant. He'd meant it as a compliment. He hadn't realized it was a goodbye. It's not your fault, Diane said quietly, reading his mind the way mothers do. She'd wrapped her arm around his shoulders, holding him close. Whatever you're thinking right now, whatever guilt you're feeling, it's not your fault, baby. But it felt like his fault. It felt like he'd been so consumed by his own battle, his own need to prove himself, that he'd abandoned the person who'd always stood beside him in the trenches. They pulled up to the emergency entrance, and Dr. Thornton barely had time to put the car in park before Marcus was out and running through the automatic doors. The harsh fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell of the hospital hit him like a physical force. "Jerome Martinez," he gasped at the reception desk. "Where is he? Is he okay?" The nurse, a tired-looking woman in her 40s, glanced at her computer screen with practiced efficiency. "Are you family?" Marcus started, then stopped. He wasn't family. Not legally. Not in the way hospitals cared about. But then his mother was there, still in her nurse's aide scrubs, her hospital ID badge visible. "I'm Diane Washington, I work here in the geriatric wing. Jerome Martinez's mother, Rosa, listed me as secondary emergency contact for school purposes. This is her son's best friend. Where is he?" The nurse's expression softened slightly. She knew Diane, everyone who worked at County General knew Diane, who'd been there for 8 years, who worked doubles without complaining, who remembered everyone's names and birthdays. "4th floor, ICU. Room 417. But," she hesitated. "He's not conscious. They had to sedate him after they pumped his stomach. The overdose was significant. They're not sure about brain damage yet." Marcus felt the floor tilt beneath him. Overdose. Pumped his stomach. Brain damage. Eleanor caught his arm, steadying him. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go see your friend." The elevator ride to the 4th floor was silent except for the mechanical hum and the occasional ding of passing floors. Marcus counted each number as it lit up, 1, 2, 3, 4, like a countdown to something terrible. The ICU was quiet in that specific way that hospital intensive care units are quiet, where every sound is muffled and urgent at the same time. Machines beeped softly. Nurses moved with purposeful silence. The air smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Room 417 was at the end of the hall. Through the window, Marcus could see Jerome lying in the bed, surrounded by machines. Tubes and wires connected him to monitors that blinked with green and red lights, tracking heartbeats and oxygen levels and things Marcus didn't understand but knew were measuring whether his best friend would live or die. A doctor was standing outside the room, talking to a nurse. When he saw Diane's hospital badge, he approached them. "You're here for Jerome Martinez?" His voice was gentle but tired. "I'm Dr. Patel. I'm the one who treated him when he came in." "How bad is it?" Diane asked, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Dr. Patel glanced at Marcus, clearly uncertain how much to say in front of a child, but Diane put her hand on Marcus's shoulder. "He's 12, but he's smart enough to understand. And he deserves to know the truth." The doctor nodded slowly. "He took approximately 30 pills, a combination of his mother's anxiety medication and over-the-counter sleep aids. A classmate found him in the bathroom at school around noon and immediately called for help. The school nurse initiated emergency protocols, which probably saved his life. We pumped his stomach and administered activated charcoal. His vitals are stable now, but he's sedated because he was extremely agitated when he regained consciousness." "Brain damage?" Eleanor asked quietly. "Too early to tell. We won't know the full extent until the sedation wears off and we can do cognitive assessments. But the fact that he was found relatively quickly is in his favor." Dr. Patel paused. "He left a note. The school counselor has it, but the police took photographs. It's clear this wasn't an impulsive act. He'd been planning it." Marcus felt something break inside his chest. A note. Jerome had written a note, had planned this, had decided that leaving was better than staying, and Marcus had been too wrapped up in his own world to see it coming. "Can I see him?" Marcus's voice came out as barely a whisper. Dr. Patel looked at Diane, who nodded. 5 minutes. And don't be alarmed by the tubes and machines. They look scarier than they are. Marcus walked into the room on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. The machines were louder in here, each beep a reminder that Jerome's life was being measured and monitored and sustained by technology. His best friend looked small in the hospital bed. Jerome had always been small, short for his age, skinny in a way that made other kids call him weak. His black hair was plastered to his forehead with sweat, and his brown skin had a grayish tint that Marcus had never seen before. The breathing tube in his mouth made him look vulnerable in a way that was almost unbearable to witness. Marcus pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. He didn't know what to do with his hands, so he carefully took Jerome's hand in his own. It was cool to the touch, and so still. "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I was too focused on my own stuff to see that you were hurting. I'm sorry I didn't understand what you meant when you said you were tired of fighting." The machines continued their steady beeping. Jerome didn't move. "I won," Marcus continued, tears streaming down his face. "I got first place. Perfect score in all 3 rounds. And this woman, this horrible woman, she accused me of cheating in front of everyone. She said I didn't earn it because of how I look. And everyone defended me, and it felt good, and I got this scholarship, and I met my great-aunt, and we found out my grandfather left money for me, and it was supposed to be the best day of my life." His voice broke completely. "But none of it matters if you're not here. None of it matters if you don't wake up. You're my best friend, Jerome. You're the only person at school who gets it, who understands what it's like. You can't leave me. You can't." Behind him, Marcus heard his mother stifle a sob. Eleanor was crying too, he could hear it in her breathing. "Remember in 4th grade," Marcus continued, his words tumbling out desperately, "when Brandon Chen called you a slur and said you didn't belong in advanced math? And you wanted to quit, but I told you that you were twice as smart as Brandon and that we had to stick together? You stayed. You stayed because we were a team. We're still a team, Jerome. Please don't quit now. Please." The door opened softly, and a woman rushed in, Rosa Martinez, Jerome's mother, still in her housekeeping uniform from the hotel where she worked. Her face was destroyed with grief and fear. "My baby," she sobbed, rushing to the other side of the bed. "My baby, what did you do?" Diane moved to comfort her, wrapping an arm around Rosa's shoulders. The 2 mothers had met dozens of times at school events, had shared coffee while their brilliant sons studied together, had commiserated about raising gifted children in a world that didn't always see their gifts. Rosa looked at Marcus across the bed, her eyes red and swollen. "Did you know?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Did he tell you he was feeling like this?" Marcus shook his head, shame and guilt crushing his chest. "No. I should have seen it, but I didn't. I was too focused on the competition. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Martinez. I'm so sorry." "No, mi hijo," Rosa reached across and touched Marcus's face. "This is not your fault. You are a child. You are his friend. This is on me. I work too much. I'm never home. I didn't see." "Nobody saw," Eleanor interjected gently. "Because he was hiding it. Because he was protecting all of you from his pain. That's what children do sometimes. They protect us until they can't anymore." 6 months later. Marcus Washington stood in the hallway of Jefferson Middle School, but he wasn't alone anymore. Next to him, Jerome Martinez was taping a flyer to the bulletin board, bright yellow paper with bold black letters, "Mental Health Matters, Student Support Group, Wednesdays 3 p.m., Library." Jerome's hands were steady now. His smile, though still cautious, was real. "You think anyone will actually come?" Jerome asked, stepping back to admire their work. "They'll come," Marcus said with certainty. "Mrs. Chen said 5 students already asked her about it." The past 6 months had transformed both of them in ways that went far beyond the visible. Jerome had spent 2 weeks in the psychiatric hospital after that terrible day, followed by 3 months of intensive outpatient therapy. He'd been diagnosed with depression and anxiety, started medication, and slowly, painfully slowly, began to rebuild himself. Marcus had been there for every step. Not as the brilliant student who'd won competitions, but as the friend who'd almost lost everything that mattered while chasing external validation. The $600,000 trust fund had changed their lives practically. Marcus's mother had quit her night job. They'd moved to a better apartment, still modest, but with 2 bedrooms and windows that actually opened. The constant financial terror that had colored every decision was gone. But the real transformation was deeper than money. Marcus had taken Dr. Thornton's scholarship to Princeton's summer program, but he'd done something unprecedented. He'd requested that Jerome be allowed to attend as well, offering to split his stipend to cover Jerome's expenses. When Dr. Thornton heard the story, he'd created a second scholarship on the spot. The program now had a policy: no gifted student should ever study alone when they could learn together. Every Tuesday after school, Marcus went back to Oakwood Heights, not to the house his mother had almost bought before Caroline's confrontation, but to the community center 3 blocks away. There, he and Jerome ran a free math tutoring program for elementary school kids. They taught arithmetic and algebra, yes, but more importantly, they taught resilience. They taught kids that being smart and being different was okay. That struggling didn't mean failing. That asking for help was strength, not weakness. Eleanor had become a fixture in their lives, making up for 12 lost years with fierce devotion. She'd given Marcus all of his grandfather's research notebooks, 47 volumes of mathematical explorations, theories, and personal reflections. But she'd also given him something more valuable: stories. Stories of James Washington as a man, not a legend. His flaws, his kindness, his regrets, his humanity. Marcus kept his grandfather's letter in a frame above his desk, reading it whenever the pressure to be perfect became overwhelming. "I hope you're kind more than brilliant." Those words had become his compass. The school had changed too, in small but significant ways. After the competition incident went viral, because of course it went viral, 300 witnesses with cameras, Jefferson Middle had implemented mandatory anti-bias training for all staff. They'd created a committee to examine how they treated students of color in advanced programs. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but it was movement in the right direction. As for the villains of that day, their fates had played out with the inexorable logic of consequences. Jennifer Hartwick's life had unraveled completely. The video of her accusation had been viewed over 8 million times. Her employer, a prestigious marketing firm, had terminated her employment within 48 hours. Her husband, a corporate lawyer whose clients valued discretion and reputation, had filed for divorce 3 months later. He'd been quietly hemorrhaging clients who didn't want to be associated with his wife's nationally televised racism. Jennifer had been forced to sell their Oakwood Heights home at a loss. The last Marcus had heard, she was living in a small apartment 2 states away, working retail, her LinkedIn profile scrubbed of her previous life. Her son Derek had transferred schools, trying to escape the shadow of his mother's actions. Marcus felt no joy in her destruction. He'd learned from his grandfather's letter that cruelty, even justified cruelty, diminished the person who wielded it. But he did feel a grim satisfaction knowing that actions had consequences, that the world could sometimes balance its scales. Caroline, the woman who'd started everything by calling the police on his mother, had faced her own reckoning. The HOA had quietly asked her to resign after the story gained attention. 3 families had filed complaints about her pattern of harassment. She'd moved away as well, her reign of suburban terror finally ended. "Marcus?" Jerome's voice pulled him back to the present. "You okay? You were spacing out." Marcus smiled. "Yeah. Just thinking about how different everything is now." "Different good or different weird?" Jerome asked, that familiar spark of humor finally back in his eyes. Both, Marcus admitted. Definitely both. They walked together toward the library, where Mrs. Chen was setting up chairs for their support group's first official meeting. Through the windows, Marcus could see his mother's car pulling into the parking lot. She'd started volunteering as a parent coordinator, using her medical background to connect students with mental health resources. Marcus thought about his trophy, sitting on his shelf at home. First place, National Mathematics Olympiad. It was still an achievement, still something to be proud of. But it wasn't the thing he was most proud of anymore. What he was proud of was simpler and more profound. He'd learned that winning meant nothing if you lost yourself in the process. That brilliance without compassion was just noise. That the real measure of a person wasn't how high they could climb, but who they helped up along the way. His grandfather had spent a lifetime proving he belonged. Marcus was spending his life proving that everyone belonged. The difference between achievement and legacy isn't what you earn, it's what you give. Marcus hadn't just won a competition that day 6 months ago. He'd found his family, saved his best friend, and discovered that the greatest gift his grandfather had left him wasn't money or notebooks or even his brilliant mind. It was the understanding that true excellence is measured not by how you rise above others, but by how you lift them up alongside you. If this story of legacy and resilience touched your heart, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories that will restore your faith in justice and the power of community to heal what cruelty tries to break.